The topic for this transmedia project pitch is that of men in society, more specifically, how toxic masculinity affects men in our society today. So what are some of these traits that men are forced to do in society in order for them not to feel inadequate? Well, to begin with, extreme self-reliance. The concept of a man providing for his family and therefore being a failure if he can't. Another one is extreme aspiration for physical and intellectual dominance. This is a topic that I would be focusing on in this specific story, where men feel the need to be so dominant in society. And if they aren't dominant or show that dominance in society, they value themselves less and they think that society values them as less and inferior as well. So how do I intend to raise awareness about this? Well, for starters, this issue is prevalent in our society today. It is an issue that is deteriorating men's health all around the world. Men's mental health, more importantly. My target audience for this would not just be society, as it's too vague and broad of a term, but it would be more specifically the men and the women who act as aggressors in the situation. Men who force other men to identify themselves with these toxic traits to show their manliness. Women who set these standards for men in order for them to be desirable and attractive towards women. To elaborate further, I'd like to discuss how some men choose violence over words to give in to that stigma that society has forced upon men, where in order for them to be dominant and have a voice in society, they must defend themselves and their actions and their words, sometimes also choosing violence. My issue with this is that violence is not always the answer, and how men, due to toxic masculinity, are choosing violence more often than not in order to get their points across. Before we jump into the story, which illustrates a literal violent characteristic of toxic masculinity, I'd like to talk about the catchline for this campaign, which is the only thing that men should be beating up is their toxic masculinity. Now we move on to the story, which by using transmedia portals, we can get this message across to the masses. Our story takes place in the setting of a busy traffic stop, where during the evening, people rush home to see their families and friends in order to relax and enjoy their evening. Here, we are introduced to three of our main characters, Jake, Katie, and Derek. Jake and Katie are on their way home after a tiring day of work, and Katie decides to get coffee on the way home. Derek is also on the way home to see his wife and kids after a tiring day at work. Jake, Katie, and Derek all arrive at a traffic stop. Our three main characters have all stopped at the signal. Derek takes this opportunity to text his wife, who he hasn't spoken to all day. Derek drops his phone, and as he's reaching for it, his foot slips off the brake. In doing so, he rear ends into Jake and Katie's car. The collision causes Katie's hot coffee to spill, causing painful reaction of hers, with her yelling at Jake, instigating him to react against Derek, and Katie putting more and more pressure on Jake to do something about the situation. Jake, then instigated by Katie's words, gives in to his toxic masculinity trait and violently strikes Derek across the face. Derek then calls the cops. Although Derek was at fault in the situation for rear end, Jake has been charged with assault. How could this have gone differently? Well, for starters, Jake could have helped calm his girlfriend down, and instead of becoming angry at her words, he could have calmly approached Derek, consulted the police, and have a civil case for an accident. Instead, the situation turned into Jake assaulting Derek out of a fit of rage, instigated by spiteful words said by his girlfriend to try and prove his toxic masculinity trait of defending his possessions, his family, as well as showing a demonstration of violence against Derek to show that he's the superior man and the guy in charge. Finally, through the use of transmedia platforms, we can use social media as well as this video created to raise awareness about this topic. A topic which plagues our society today, where violent tendencies are erupting within men to show their aggression and dominance in society.